The auditorium was cold and dark. Commander Thelra stood at the front, his blue skin wrinkled with age, scars covered his face and arms. He looked at the young Vin cadets sitting before him. They were fresh and eager. They knew nothing of real war. You want to know about humans, Thelra said. His voice was rough and tired. You think they are like us? You think they follow the same rules of war? You are wrong. The cadets leaned forward. They had heard stories about the Terran contact wars. Those wars had ended 50 years ago. The Vin Empire had fallen. Now they lived in a smaller, quieter world, but the memory of humans remained. Thelx closed his eyes. The memories came back sharp and clear. He was young again. He wore his officer uniform with pride. The Vin fleet moved through space toward a human colony world. They called it New Bizin. I was 25 when we reached New Bizin. Thorak said the humans had only recently learned to travel faster than light. They were primitive. They had small colonies on a few worlds. We thought they would surrender quickly. We were very wrong. The planet below was green and blue. It had forests and oceans. Human colony was small. Only 30,000 humans lived there. They mined valuable minerals from the mountains. They had one small spaceport and a few defense guns. Nothing that could stop a Vin battle fleet. Our commander gave them 20 hours to surrender. Thelrax continued. He followed proper military law. He told them they would be treated fairly if they gave up. He expected them to accept. Any reasonable species would accept, but the humans did not accept. They sent back a simple message. It was only 3 words: come and take it. Vin officers laughed. Thelrax remembered laughing too. How foolish these humans were, how arrogant. They would learn. The invasion began at dawn. Vin dropped ships fell through the atmosphere like rain. Thelrax commanded a strike team. They aimed for the mining settlement in the northern mountains. Intelligence said only a small garrison defended it, maybe 50 human soldiers against 300 Ren warriors. It should be easy. The settlement appeared through the morning mist. It was built into the mountainside. Simple buildings made of metal and concrete. Mining equipment stood silent. The humans knew they were coming. We landed 2 km away. Thelx told the cadets. Standard assault formation. We moved toward the settlement. That is when we first met squad leader Diong. Diong was not what Thelra expected. He was not tall or impressive. He was a thick man with rough hands. Later, Thelra learned he had been a construction worker before the war. He had built homes and schools. Now he held a rifle. The first shots came from the ridge. 3 Vin soldiers fell. The humans had positioned themselves perfectly. They knew every rock and tree. They had prepared for weeks. Fall back to cover. Thelra shouted. His soldiers scattered. More shots rang out. Humans were good shooters, very good. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days for a settlement that should have fallen in 3 hours. Diong's squad moved like ghosts. They appeared, fired, and disappeared. They used traps and mines. They fought from the buildings, from the mines, from the very rocks. On the second day, Thelra saw something that disturbed him. A young human medic ran through heavy fire. His name was Jae Sung. He could not have been more than 20 years old. He pulled a wounded soldier to safety. The wounded human had lost his leg. He was screaming, "Leave me!" The wounded soldier shouted, "Save yourself!" Jae Sung ignored him. He dragged the man across open ground while bullets hit the dirt. Around them, a Vrim warrior had a clear shot. Delra saw him aim, then the warrior lowered his weapon. Even he could not shoot someone trying to save a life. The human communications officer was named Hyan. She stayed at her radio post inside the main building. The Vrim surrounded the building. They fired rockets at it. The walls cracked and crumbled. Fire spread through the rooms. But Hyan kept broadcasting. She sent warnings to other settlements. She called for help. She gave positions of reinforces. We could hear her on our radios. Thelra said quietly. Her building was collapsing. She must have known she would die, but she kept talking, kept sending information until the very end. The cadets were silent. Some looked uncomfortable. Diang was finally cornered on the third day. He was in the main mining office with 12 soldiers. They had no ammunition left. They had no food or water. By Vin standards, they had fought with honor. It was time to surrender. Drax himself approached under a white flag. He called out to Diang. He offered good terms. Fighting could end. Lives could be saved. Diang appeared at the window. His face was covered in dirt and blood. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were still fierce. Will you leave our world? Diang asked. No, Thelra answered honestly, but you will live. Your people will live. Then we cannot surrender. Diang said. You have no ammunition. Thelra said. You cannot win. Diang smiled. It was a terrible smile. We do not need to win. We just need to make you pay for every meter, every building, every life. We will make you remember this place. We will make you remember us. They attacked with knives and tools, with rocks in their bare hands. The Vin killed them all. But they lost 37 soldiers doing it. 37 trained warriors killed by exhausted, starving humans who refused to quit. Colony fell after 2 weeks. The Vin won. They raised their flag over New Bizon. But they had lost 4,000 soldiers, 4,000, against 30,000 civilians and a few hundred soldiers. The numbers made no sense. Thelrax was promoted to captain. His superiors praised his courage, but at night he saw Diang smile. He heard Hiron and LT Uncan GT's voice on the radio. He remembered Jaesung running through fire to save his friend. The humans taught us something that day. Thelrax told the cadets. They taught us that logic has limits, that mathematics does not rule everything. They showed us that some species do not surrender when they should. They fight when fighting is impossible. They die rather than accept defeat. An old cadet raised his hand. But Commander, they lost. We won. Thrax looked at him with sad eyes. Did we? Wait until you hear the rest, then tell me who won. The auditorium was very quiet. Outside, night was falling. Thelrax prepared to tell them about what came next, about the counterattack, about the moment the Ven Empire began to understand what humans truly were, and about why that understanding came too late to save them. Thelra paused. He poured water into a glass with shaking hands. The cadets waited. Some of them looked nervous now. They were beginning to understand that this was not a story of glorious victory. 6 months passed after New Bizon. Thal said, we occupied 12 human colony worlds. We thought the war was over. We thought the humans would negotiate. They did not negotiate. They prepared. The Vin had their theories about warfare. They had rules. When an army lost 15% of its forces, it retreated when a colony was captured. The species surrendered it and negotiated. This was logical. This was civilized. Every species in the galaxy followed these rules except humans. Counterattack came without warning. Thelrax was stationed on New Bizin. Vin had turned it into a military base. They built fortifications. They brought in heavy weapons. Planet was valuable and they would keep it. The first sign was the sensor. Readings, ships were coming, many ships. But something was wrong with the signatures. Some were military vessels, but others were civilian transports. Cargo haulers, even passenger ships. We thought it was an evacuation fleet. Thelra said, we thought the humans were running away from some other sector. We did not fire immediately. That was our first mistake. The fleet came closer. Then it opened fire. The civilian ships were armed. The humans had welded weapons onto cargo haulers. They had turned passenger ships into carriers. They had converted mining vessels into bombers. Leading the fleet was Commander Young. He was a veteran of Earth's old wars. He had fought other humans before. Fighting aliens, he understood something. The Vin did not. He understood that humans fought differently when they were angry. Young Seek sent us a message. Thelrax remembered. He said, you took our homes, now we take them back. Surrender or die. Our commander laughed. He said humans were too emotional, too foolish. He prepared to destroy their fleet. The space battle was chaos. The Vin had better ships, better weapons, better training, but the humans had something else. They had rage. They had volunteers who had lost their families on New Bizin. They had civilians who learned to fight. Just to come to this battle, a human transport ship was hit. It was burning. It was falling toward the planet. By all logic, the crew should have evacuated. Instead, they turned the ship toward a rain carrier. They aimed for the engine section. They accelerated. Evacuate. Young's voice came over the radio. You have 10 seconds. The crew jumped into escape pods at the last moment. The transport hit the carrier at full speed. Both ships exploded. The carrier was destroyed. 100 Ren died. The transport was a cargo ship. It cost nothing compared to a military carrier. But that was not what frightened Thelrax. What frightened him was that the crew volunteered. They flew a suicide mission and only escaped at the last second. They were willing to die if it meant destroying the enemy. Humans do not value their lives cheaply, Thelrax told the cadets, but they will spend those lives when necessary. They calculate differently than we do. For us, survival is the priority. For them, winning is the priority, even if winning costs everything. The fleet battle lasted 6 hours. The Vin won. Technically, they destroyed more enemy ships, but they lost 3 carriers and 8 destroyers. The humans lost twice as many ships, but those ships were converted civilians' vessels. The exchange was not equal. Then the ground assault began. Drop pods fell like meteors. Human Marines landed on New Bizin. They came to take back their world. Thelra commanded the northern sector defense. He had 1,000 soldiers. He had artillery and armor. He had every advantage. The humans landed with 300 Marines. 300 against 1,000. It should have been easy. The Marines were led by Bangsha. She had been a teacher before the war. She taught children mathematics and music. Now she taught Vin soldiers what fear meant. The first attack came at night. The humans moved silently. They did not charge. They did not make noise, they simply appeared in the trenches, hand to each hand, fighting in the dark, knives and fists. Brutal and quick. By morning Thelra had lost 200 soldiers, the humans had lost 30. Boncha sent him a message. Leave our world, this is your only warning. Thorax did not leave, he could not leave, orders were orders, so that fighting continued. On the third day, the Vin used chemical weapons. It was legal under Vin law, non-lethal gas that caused paralysis. They fired it into the human positions. The humans should have retreated, should have surrendered, should have at least stopped attacking. Instead, they came out of the gas, wearing improvised masks, cloth soaked in water, filters made from mining equipment. They had adapted in hours to a weapon that should have ended the battle. Boncha led the counterattack. Personally, she drove a heavy mining vehicle through the Vin lines. It was not a military vehicle. It was meant for moving rocks, but it had thick armor and heavy weight. It crushed barriers and scattered soldiers. Behind her came the Marines. They were coughing. Some were injured from the gas, but they fought. Anyway, they fought like the gas had made them angry instead of weak. I shot at Boncha myself, Thelra said quietly. I had her in my sights. I fired 3 times. I hit her twice. She fell. I thought I had killed her, but Boncha stood up. She was wearing body armor. The shots had cracked her ribs. Thorax learned this later, but she stood up. Anyway, she raised her weapon. She kept fighting. That was when Thorax understood. Humans did not stop when they were hurt. They did not stop when they were losing. They did not stop when logic said they should stop. They only stopped when they were dead. The battle lasted 2 weeks. Every day lost more soldiers. Every night the humans attacked. They used tactics that made no sense. They sacrificed positions to gain others. They retreated, then attacked from new directions. They adapted constantly. Young Sikh landed. More troops, more converted civilian ships arrived, more volunteers who wanted revenge. The Vin reinforcements could not break through the human fleet, the fleet that should have been destroyed, the fleet that refused to die. On the 14th day, Thorax received new orders. Evacuate New Bizin. Retreat to the next system. Hold there. He could not believe it. They were retreating. The Vin Empire was retreating from primitive humans. It was impossible. It was shameful, but it was necessary. The evacuation was a nightmare. The humans harassed them constantly. They destroyed landing pads. They attacked transports. Young's fleet waited in orbit. They let some Vin ships leave, but they made every departure cost lives. Thorax was on the last transport. He looked down at New Bizin as they left. He saw smoke rising from a dozen cities. He saw the ruins of what they had built. He saw the human flag rising again over the capital. Bong Dash sent one final message. Do not come back. We will be waiting. The transport jumped to hyperspace. Delra sat in silence. Around him, soldiers were crying. Some were injured. All were traumatized. They had lost New Bizin. They had lost 4,000 soldiers in the occupation. They had lost 8,000 more in the battle to hold it. 12,000 Vin dead for one small colony world, and there were 50 more human colonies, 50 more worlds where humans would fight like Boncha and Young, 50 more worlds where surrender was not an option. That was when our empire began. To calculate the true cost, Thellers told the cadets, we could beat humans in any Single battle, but they did not need to win battles, they only needed to make. Each battle cost too much to make each victory feel like defeat, a cadet spoke. Up her voice was small. Did we ever beat them, really beat them? Thelra smiled sadly. We won battles, we took worlds. We killed their soldiers, but beat them? No, you cannot beat an enemy who will not accept defeat. You can only survive them or join them. Auditorium was silent except for the sound of Thelra's breathing outside. The night was deep. Tomorrow he would tell them about the prisoner exchange, about the human who taught him what courage really meant. But tonight let them think about Boncha, about young Seek, about humans who refuse to follow the rules of war. Thelrax returned the next day. The cadets were already seated when he arrived. Some looked like they had not slept well. Good, they were beginning to understand. The war continued for 3 more years. Thelra began. We won many battles, we lost many battles, but slowly we realized something. We were not fighting a war anymore. We were fighting an idea, and you cannot kill an idea with weapons. After New Bizin, the Vin Command changed their strategy. They would not occupy human worlds. They would destroy military targets and leave hit and run quick strikes. Do not give the humans time to organize their terrible defenses. It worked. For a while the Vin destroyed shipyards and weapon factories. They struck communication hubs. They avoided ground battles when possible. The human fleets were pushed back. The war seemed to be turning in the Vin favor. Then came the prisoner exchange. This is the part that changed me, Delra said. His voice was soft. This is when I began to understand what humans really are. The exchange was arranged on a neutral station. The Vin had captured 200 human soldiers. The humans had captured 300. Vin, it was a fair trade. Both sides agreed to release prisoners and negotiate. Thelrax was chosen to oversee the Vin side. He was now a colonel. He had survived 4 major battles. He was considered an expert on humans. He thought he understood them. The humans arrived first. Their delegation was led by a diplomatic officer, but among them was someone else, a civilian researcher named Sunhai. She had survived the invasion of New Bizin. She had lost her family there, her husband, her 2 children, both under 10 years old. Now she worked for the human diplomatic corps. She worked for peace. Thelrax could not understand it. How could she work for peace with the people who killed her family? But the prisoner exchange was routine at first. The Vin soldiers were brought out. They were thin but healthy. The humans had treated them according to war laws. They had food and medical care. Some looked ashamed. They had surrendered. In Vin culture, that was a deep shame. Then the human prisoners came out. Thelrax was shocked. They looked worse than expected. Many were injured. Some could barely walk, but they were smiling, laughing even. They joked with their guards. They thanked the Vin medics who had treated them. One prisoner stood out. His name was Kite. He was a lieutenant. He had been captured 8 months ago. He had a broken leg that had healed badly. He was thin. His hair had gone gray. He could not have been older than 35, but he walked out with his head high. He waved at the V-guards. Thanks for the hospitality, he called out. Some of the guards looked confused. One smiled despite himself. Delrax requested a private meeting with Kite. He wanted to understand he needed to understand. The human diplomats agreed, they said. Kit would be happy to talk. They met in a small room, just the two of them in a transil. Kite sat down with a grunt of pain. His leg clearly hurt, but he smiled at Thelra. You want to know why we fight? Kite said. It was not a question. Yes, Thelra admitted. I want to know why you do not surrender, why you do not negotiate, why you throw away lives for small victories. Kite was quiet for a moment. He looked at his hands. They were scarred and rough. Do you have children, Colonel? Kit asked. No, Thelra said. Vin do not reproduce like humans do. We lay eggs in communal pools. The young are raised by the community, so you do not know your parents, your children. We know them. But the bond is different. Kit nodded. Slowly, that explains much. Humans are different. We know our parents. We raise our own children. We see them grow. We teach them. We love them in a way that is ... personal, individual. He looked up at Thelra. His eyes were hard. When you invaded New Bison, you killed children. You killed families, not as targets, just as casualties. Acceptable losses. Do you understand what that means to us? The said nothing. It means every human who survived has a reason to fight, not just for territory, not just for resources, for revenge, for memory, for the promise that it will not happen again. But you cannot win, Thelra said. Your species is outnumbered, outgunned. Every battle costs you more than it costs us. Kite laughed. It was a bitter sound. You think we do not know that? We know. Every soldier knows. Every civilian knows. But here is what you do not understand. We would rather die fighting than live under your rule. That is not insanity. That is choice. It is illogical. No, it is very logical. You just use different logic. Kit leaned forward. Tell me, Colonel, how do you feel when you go into battle? I feel confident, prepared. I trust my training. Do you feel afraid sometimes? Fear is natural. And what do you do with that fear? I control it. I use logic to overcome it. Kite smiled. That is where we differ. Humans feel fear more strongly than you. Our bodies are weaker. We die easier. We feel pain more acutely. We know all of this, and we are terrified. Every battle, every fight, we are terrified. Then why fight? Because courage is not the absence of fear. Colonel, courage is acting despite fear. You Ren are brave because you do not feel much fear, but humans, we feel all the fear and fight anyway. That is our strength. Thelra sat back. He had never thought of it that way. You asked why we do not surrender, Kit continued. Answer is simple. If we surrender, we accept that our fear was right. We accept that we should not have fought. But if we fight and die, we prove that some things matter more than survival. We prove that we cannot be conquered by fear. We can only be killed, and even death does not erase what we fought for. The room was very quiet. Thelrex felt something strange. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something closer to sadness or respect. I was terrified. When I was captured, Kite said, I thought I would be tortured, killed, but your soldiers treated me fairly. Some were even kind. I learned that you are not evil. You are just different. You think differently about life and death, about sacrifice and survival. Then why continue the war? Delrex asked. If you know we are not evil because you invaded our homes, you killed our people, evil or not, that cannot be forgiven. It can only be answered. Later, Thelra met Sunhai. She was reviewing the prisoner transfer documents. She looked tired. Older than she probably was. You lost your family on New Bizon, Thelra said. Son dash, he looked up. Her face showed no emotion. Yes, I was there. I commanded troops in that invasion. No, I read your file, and yet you work for peace. Why? Sonny set down her papers. Because my children would have wanted peace. Because my husband believed in diplomacy. Because revenge will not bring them back, but it will help me sleep at night knowing we fight for a reason that is contradictory. Yes, humans are full of contradictions. She smiled slightly. We work for peace while preparing for war. We forgive while remembering. We hope while expecting the worst. That is what makes us human. It sounds exhausting. It is, but it also means we never give up, even when we should. The prisoner exchange completed successfully. Both sides returned their captives. Negotiations began for a ceasefire in 3 sectors. It seemed like progress, but Thelra knew better. Now he understood something his commanders did not. The humans were not negotiating from weakness. They were buying time. They were learning. They were preparing for the next phase. That night Thorax wrote a report. He sent it to the high command. He explained what he had learned, that humans fought differently because they thought differently, that fear made them stronger, not weaker, that they would never accept defeat because defeat meant accepting that their fear was justified. The high command ignored his report. They said he was too close to the enemy, that he had become sympathetic, that he did not understand grand strategy. 3 months later, the humans launched their largest offensive yet. They pushed the Vrim back from 12 systems. They destroyed 2 more fleets. They showed no mercy and took no prisoners in certain battles. Thelrax received a new message from Kite. It said only, we remember, we always remember. That was the turning point. Thelrax told the cadets, not a battle, not a strategy, but understanding. The moment I understood that we could not win, not because we were weaker, but because they would never stop, and an enemy who will never stop cannot be defeated. They can only be endured or joined. A cadet raised his hand. What happened to Kite? Thelra smiled sadly. He survived the war. He became a diplomat. He helped write the peace treaty. We correspond. Sometimes he sends me messages on holidays. He is a good person, but he is still a human, and humans never forget. The 3rd day of testimony began with rain. Thelrex watched it fall outside the window. Rain on the Vin home world was rare. Perhaps it was fitting. This would be the hardest part to tell. The war entered its final year. Thelrach said both sides were exhausted. We had lost 30% of our fleet. The humans had lost more, but they kept building ships. They kept training soldiers. They converted their entire economy to war production. Every factory, every resource, everything went to the military. The cadets listened carefully. They were no longer eager young students. They were somber. They were learning what war really cost. The Vin High Command held a secret meeting. Thelrax was invited because of his experience. They showed him the calculations. The mathematics were clear. The Vin could win every battle, but each victory cost more than they could afford. Each human world required months to conquer and thousands of casualties. The humans had 73 colony worlds. The Vin had conquered 8. At the current rate, it would take 50 years to conquer them all, and the casualties would exceed 2 million Vin soldiers. The Empire only had 8 million military-aged citizens total. We could win the war and destroy ourselves, the Supreme Commander said, or we could negotiate peace. Many commanders argued for continuing. They said human losses were greater. They said humans would break eventually. They said Vin honor required victory. Delrex spoke up. He knew it might end his career, but he had to speak. Humans do not break, he said. I have fought them. For 3 years I have captured them. I have killed them. I have spoken with them. They do not break. They bend. They adapt. They learn, but they do not break. All species break, a general said. It is mathematical certainty. Not humans, Thelra insisted. They have something we do not have. They have memory that drives them. They fight not just for themselves, but for their dead. Every human we kill creates more enemies. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting a species that treats war as personal. The room was silent. If we continue, Thelrach said, we will win battles, but we will lose the empire. Our population will decline. Our economy will collapse, and the humans will still be fighting. They will fight until every last one of them is dead, and then their children will fight, and their children's children. The Supreme Commander looked at him for a long time. What do you recommend, Colonel? I recommend we negotiate now while we still have leverage before they push us back to our own systems. Some commanders shouted anger. Some called him a coward, but others were quiet. They had seen the same reports. They knew the same mathematics. They just did not want to admit it. The decision was made to open peace negotiations. The humans agreed immediately. They sent Admiral Jinho to lead their delegation. Jinho was old. He had fought in every major battle of the war. He had lost his left arm in the defense of Earth's orbital stations. He had scars across his face, but he smiled when he met the Vin delegation. Thank you for agreeing to talk, Jinho said. His voice was rough. War is expensive. Peace is cheaper. The negotiations lasted 6 months. They met on a neutral space station. The discussions were difficult. Both sides wanted concessions. Both sides had demands. The humans demanded the return of all conquered worlds. Vin demanded security guarantees. The humans wanted reparations. The Vin wanted the humans to limit their military expansion. Thelrax was part of the Vin delegation. He spoke with Jinho. Often they developed a strange friendship. 2 old soldiers who understood each other. One night they sat together in the observation deck. They watched the stars in silence. Finally Thelra spoke. We could have destroyed you, he said. Early in the war we had the power. Jinho nodded. Yes, if you had committed everything at once, if you had been willing to accept high casualties, you could have won. Why did we not? Because you are logical. You calculate costs and benefits. You think like accountants. We think like poets. Jinho smiled. You saw the costs and hesitated. We saw the costs and accepted them. Is that wisdom or madness? Both. Maybe neither. It is simply human. They were quiet again. Then Jinho spoke. I lost my daughter in the first year of the war. She was a pilot. Her ship was destroyed over New Bizon. She was 23 years old. Thelrax felt the weight of those words. I am sorry. Are you? You commanded forces on New Bizon. Maybe you gave the order that killed her. Perhaps I did. And yet here we sit, talking about Peace, Jinho looked at him. Do you know why I can do this? Why I can negotiate with you? No, because my daughter would have wanted peace, because she believed in something better, because revenge will not bring her back, but ensuring others do not die, that honors her. Memory, you humans speak often of memory and honor, because that is all that outlives us. We live such short lives. Humans only have maybe 80 or 90 years. Some less so. We make our lives mean something. We fight for principles. We die for beliefs, because that is what echoes after we are gone. Thrax thought about all the humans he had fought. Diang Haiyan, Jaesung, Boncha, Yang Kai-ti. All of them fighting for something beyond survival, fighting for meaning. Your lives are short. Thrax said so. You make them burn brighter. Jinho smiled. Yes, that is a good way to say it. We burn bright because we do not have time to smolder. The negotiations concluded with a treaty. The Vin would return all conquered worlds. They would pay reparations over 50 years. They would open trade and diplomatic relations. They would agree to mutual defense pacts. The humans would limit their expansion in Vin space. They would share technology for peaceful purposes. They would allow Vin colonies in certain areas. They would not seek revenge for war crimes. Both sides would remember, but both sides would move forward. Signing ceremony was formal. Leaders from both species attended. Theora stood in his dress uniform. His chest was covered in medals, but he felt no pride, only relief. Jin Dashu approached him after the signing. He extended his hand, the human gesture of respect and greeting. Delrax took his hand. They shook, two old warriors acknowledging each other. I hope we never fight again. Jinho said, I hope the same, but if we must, I hope we fight together, not against each other. The Snorts. Thelex nodded. That would be acceptable, and that became reality. 5 years after the war ended, a new threat emerged. The Krello Empire. They were aggressive and expansionist. They threatened both human and Vin space. Humans proposed an alliance, combined military command, shared defense. The Vin Council debated for months. Many still hated humans. Many remembered the casualties and shame. But Thelra spoke in favor. He told them what he had learned, that humans were terrifying enemies, but they were even better allies if we fight beside them instead of against them. Thelra said, we gain the most ferocious soldiers in the galaxy. We gain warriors who do not surrender. We gain an ally who will remember us as friends instead of enemies. The alliance was approved. Human and Vin forces trained together. They learned each other's tactics. They built mixed crews on ships. They shared technology and strategy. When the Krello invaded, they faced something they did not expect. Vin logic and strategy combined with human determination and courage. It was devastating. The Krello sued for peace. Within 2 years, they had expected to fight divided enemies. Instead, they found united forces, and the humans taught the Vins something important. That war was not about Maddox alone. It was about will, about refusing to accept defeat, about making the enemy pay so much they stopped wanting victory. Thelrax fought in that war too. He commanded a joint task force, human Marines and Vin warriors together. He watched Boncha, now a general, lead combined forces. He saw Kite, now an admiral, coordinate fleet movements with Vin ships. And he understood the War with humans had not destroyed the Vin, it had saved them. It had taught them that there was more to strength than technology and numbers. That spirit mattered, that allies who fought like humans fought were worth more than any weapon. That is the truth, Felrax told the cadets. We lost the war, we lost lives and pride and territory, but we gained something more valuable. We gained understanding. We learned that the galaxy is not ruled by the strongest or the smartest, it is ruled by those who refuse to give up. The rain had stopped, the room was bright now. Felrax felt tired, but there was one more day, one more part of the story to tell, the most important part, how the lesson changed everything, and why he stood here today alive and free because of humans he once called enemies. The final day arrived. Thelra stood before the cadets one last time. He looked older than he had 4 days ago. Telling these stories had cost him something, but they needed to be told. Today, I will tell you why this all matters, Thelra said, why I spent 4 days telling you about defeat and loss. Why you need to understand humans. Because the future depends on it. The war had ended 30 years ago now. A full generation of Ren had grown up during peace. They knew humans as allies and trading partners. They did not know humans as enemies. That was good, but it was also dangerous because they did not understand what humans were capable of. You see humans in our cities now, Felra said. You see them as diplomats and merchants, as scientists and artists. You think they are like us, just another species, but you are wrong. Humans are never just another species. After the treaty was signed, the Vin Empire changed. It had to change. The economy was damaged. The population was traumatized. Many colonies had been destroyed. The pride of the empire was broken, but the humans helped. They sent aid. They shared technology. They opened trade routes. They did not demand humiliation. They did not seek to crush the Vin. They offered partnership. Why, Minivin asked. Why help us after we invaded them? The answer came from Jinho himself. He spoke to the Vin Council directly. Because peace is not about revenge, Jinho said. Peace is about building something better than war. If we crush you, you will hate us forever. If we help you, you will remember kindness. We choose kindness, but do not mistake kindness for weakness. That last sentence was important. Humans were kind, but they remembered, always remembered. The alliance grew strong. Human soldiers trained with Vin forces. They taught tactics. They shared strategies, and Felra learned something that changed his understanding of warfare completely. Humans did not fight well because they were fearless. They fought well because they were afraid. Fear made them cautious. Fear made them careful. Fear made them value each other's lives, and that made them stronger. A human marine named Du Yan explained it to him once. They were running training exercises together. Vin soldiers and human marines in combined operations. You Vin are brave, Dion said. You do not feel much fear, so you take risks that seem logical. You accept casualties that seem reasonable. But humans, we are terrified all the time. So we plan more, we prepare more, we watch each other's backs more, because we know how easy it is to die. But you still fight, yes, because being afraid and fighting anyway is true courage. Anyone can fight when they feel no fear. But fighting when you are terrified, that takes something special. The cadets were listening carefully. Some were Taking notes, good, let them remember. This, I want you to meet someone. Thelra said. He gestured to the back of the room. The doors opened. An old human woman walked in. She moved slowly with a cane. Her hair was white. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were still sharp. It was Bangasha. The cadets stood immediately. They knew who she was. Everyone knew who she was. General Bangsha, hero of Nubizin, commander of the 3rd Human Marine Division, one of the most decorated soldiers in human history. Sit down, Bangsha said. Her voice was still strong. I am too old for ceremony. She walked to the front of the room. She stood beside Thelex. They looked at each other. Old enemies, old friends. Colonel Thelra asked me to come, Bangsha said. He wanted you to hear from someone who fought against him, someone who hated the Vin, someone who lost everything to this war. The room was completely silent. I was a teacher, Bangsha said. I taught mathematics to children. I loved my job. I loved my students. I loved peace. Then the Vin came. They killed my students. They destroyed my school. They turned my home into a battlefield. She paused. Her hands gripped her cane tightly. I learned to hate. I learned to kill. I became very good at both. I killed many Vin soldiers. I destroyed their machines. I burned their bases. And every time I felt satisfaction, because they had taken everything from me, so I wanted to take everything from them. A cadet shifted uncomfortably. This was not what they expected, but hate is exhausting, Wangsha continued. Revenge is empty. After the war ended, I had nothing left. My students were dead. My home was rebuilt but full of ghosts. I had won, but I had lost everything that mattered. She looked at the foolish Ren. Came to New Bizin. He came to the memorial. He came to apologize. He brought flowers, human flowers, not Vin. He had researched our customs. He knelt before the memorial. He spoke the names of the dead. He remembered. He cried. Thelrex looked away. That memory still hurt. I was going to kill him. Bangsha said simply. I had a weapon. I could have shot him. No one would have stopped me. He invaded my world. He commanded the soldiers who destroyed it. By law, I could have claimed justice. Why did you not? A cadet asked. Because he remembered their names. De Young, Hyan Jung, others I had forgot. He remembered them, and I realized something. He carried the same weight I did, the same memories, the same regrets. We were not so different. She smiled slightly. So instead of killing him, I took him to lunch. We talked. He told me about Vin culture. I told him about human culture. He explained why his species fought. I explained why mine did, and slowly hate became understanding. Delra spoke. Now General Bangsha runs the War Memorial Museum. Now she teaches young humans about the war, about the costs, about the sacrifices, but also about the peace that followed, about the alliance, about turning enemies into friends. And Thelra teaches at your military academy. Bangsha added. He ensures young Vin understand what humans are, not to fear us, but to respect us, to understand that we are allies worth having and enemies worth avoiding. She looked at the cadets directly. Let me tell you the truth about humans. We are not special. We are not superior. We do not have magic powers or secret weapons. We are afraid. We are weak. We die easily. We feel pain more than you do. We have short lives and fragile bodies. She paused, but we refuse to accept defeat. We refuse to give up on what matters. We remember our dead and fight for their memory. We cry and hurt and break, but we put ourselves back together and fight. Again, that is what makes us dangerous. Not strength, not courage, but refusal. Simple, stubborn refusal to accept the unacceptable. The cadets were transfixed. If you ever fight beside humans, Bansha said, you will have the most loyal allies in the galaxy. We will die for you. We will bleed for you. We will remember you forever. But if you fight against humans, may your gods help you, because we will never stop. We will never surrender. We will make every step cost you. We will make you regret ever seeing our worlds. She tapped her cane on the floor. I say this not as a threat, but as a promise, and as a teacher. Learn from our war. Learn from our peace. Learn that the strongest species is not the one with the best weapons. It is the one with the strongest will. Thelra stepped forward. 50 years ago, I invaded human space, thinking I was fighting primitives. I was wrong. I was fighting something I did not understand, something my species had never encountered, a species that fights not for logical reasons, but for emotional ones, for love and hate and memory and hope. He looked at each cadet. You will serve in a galaxy where humans are our allies. You will fight beside them. You will work with them. You will learn from them. And I want you to remember what I taught you, that humans are dangerous not because they are strong, but because they refuse to be weak, that they are terrifying not because they are fearless, but because they fight despite fear. Jinho entered the room. He was very old now, nearly 90, but he walked straight. He wore his admiral's uniform, the medals covered his chest. I came as requested, Jinho said, though I am retired and should be fishing instead of giving speeches. Cadet smiled. Jinho was known for his humor. I want to say one thing, Jinho said. The war with the Vin was terrible. Many died, both sides suffered, both sides lost, but from that loss came something beautiful, came understanding, came alliance, came friendship. He looked at Thelra and Bansha. These two fought each other. They killed each other's soldiers. They destroyed each other's homes, and now they are friends. They teach together. They work together. They honor each other's dead together. That is the power of peace. That is what we built from the ashes of war. Jinho turned to the cadets. You are the future. You will never fight the wars we fought. You will fight new wars, face new challenges. And when you do, remember this: strength comes in many forms. Victory comes in many shapes. Sometimes the greatest victory is not defeating your enemy, but making them your friend. The ceremony ended. The cadets filed out quietly. They were thinking, processing, understanding. Thaurax, Bansha, and Jinho stood together. 3 old warriors, 3 old friends. Do you think they learned? Bansha asked. Some did, Delra said. That is enough. I hope so, Jinho said. Because the galaxy is dangerous, and they will need to understand that humans are their greatest allies or their worst enemies, depending on how they treat us. They walked to the memorial wall outside. It listed the names of all who died, Vin and human together. Diang's name was there, Haijong and LT, Unk and GT, thousands more. We remember, Felra said softly. We always remember, Bansha agreed.